Bruce Dickinson said some very nice things about Robert Plant. I'm going to tell you right now why he was wrong. So according to Dickinson, if you want to understand heavy metal vocals, you really only need 3 singers: Robert Plant, Ian Gillan, and Paul Rogers. Dickinson calls these 3 singers the 3 pillars, and he suggests that if you mix those voices in the right combinations, you basically, quote, have everybody, end quote, in heavy metal. Now on paper, that's a compelling framework. Plant brings the wild kind of edge, Gillan brings the banshee wails, though Plant also has those, and high drama, and Paul Rogers brings the grit, swagger, and power along with a kind of operatic delivery. But here's where I want to kind of push back a little bit. Not to say Dickinson is totally wrong, but to ask whether or not Robert Plant actually belongs in this trio as a foundational heavy metal influence. Because when I listen to Robert Plant, I don't really hear the DNA of modern metal vocals or classic metal vocals. And let's talk about why. So when we think of Plant, we definitely think of screams and wails and a blues delivery, extreme sexuality, a lot of improvisation. When you zoom in on his voice itself, Plant often sounds much closer to American blues wailers, early rock and roll singers, R&B singers, and definitely like old-time crooners if you think about a song like the Rain Song. And Plant himself has described his improvisational parts as psychedelic scat. These aren't unstructured lines. They're not based on classic musicality. They're totally from the gut. And it's expressive, emotional, and brilliant in its own way. But do you really think this sounds like the source code for heavy metal vocals? I'm not convinced. So here's kind of a test. Listen to someone like James Hetfield, or someone like Rob Halford, or someone like Dio, or any of the metal bands from the 80s or 90s. I do hear a lot of Led Zeppelin influence, particularly in the drums, song structure, and definitely in the look, but I don't hear Plant influence. So Hetfield, for example, comes more from barked rhythms and clenched jaw, aggression, and percussive phrasing. Halford is more like an opera singer with sustained high notes and laser beam technique. I wouldn't use either one of those to describe Robert Plant. Modern metal and hardcore music is based on death growls and harsh vocals, extreme rasp, and stadium-sized chanting vocals. Very structured, very controlled, very muscular, and there's nothing of the psychedelic scat, let alone the R&B influence there. Plant's whole thing was sensuality, improvisation, and exploration. Modern metal vocals are more like architecture, engineered and built to destroy, and they're very rarely rooted in sexuality or improvisation. Completely different worlds. So if I had to look for the actual DNA of metal vocals, what I hear is Ian Gillan's high register screaming, Rob Halford's refining that into pure steel, Dio taking it up on Led Zeppelin's mythic storytelling qualities, but it has nothing to do with Robert Plant's vocals. And early punk and hardcore seemed to shape what we now consider metal vocals much, much more than Robert Plant. And now metal is, as I say, based on growls and snarls and shrieks. Well, Plant used all of those, but in a completely different way. He used them as filler. His actual delivery of vocal lines was much more based in the blues. He is truly the ancestor of classic rock, but not a blueprint of heavy metal. He influenced style and aesthetics and even lifestyle and mystique, but vocally I think the connection is a lot thinner than people assume, and a lot thinner than Bruce Dickinson is pointing out in this comment. Now, none of this is anti-Robert Plant. He's one of the greatest rock singers of all time. He changed what a frontman could be. But when Bruce Dickinson says that if you mix Plant, Gillan, and Rogers, you basically get every metal singer, I just don't quite buy it. To me, Plant lives in the world of the blues, R&B, psychedelia, and sensual improvisation, not the harsher, more structured world that metal represents. That's just my ear, and I may be absolutely missing something here. So I'd love to hear from you. Do you hear Robert Plant as a primary influence over metal vocals? And are there singers today that you think clearly borrow from him? Or is Plant really more of a blues lineage figure, not a heavy metal one? Let me know what you think down in the comments.
Music Guru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers.